Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is Friday, November 13th, 2020. Hot darn! Friday the 13th, and y'all got a vocab quiz. That's rough. That stinks. That's who did that? I'm sorry. I did not think about this one at all. I'm sure it'll be easy. You'll be fine. Anyway, welcome to government class, y'all. It is Friday, unfortunately the 13th. We have a relatively jam-packed day today, actually. Last class before we move on to next week. Looking forward to it. We're going to go ahead and do a little 5-minute review as always. We're going to run that into our articles of the Constitution that we're going to be talking about today. They're going to kind of blend together. After that, you got your vocab quiz, all right? Send it to you in your email. You should have it. Very simple, very easy. Just send me back the answers. I'll go over that again with you in a little bit. After that, I'm going to give you your assignment and your attendance question, and we're going to be making moves, all right? So, without any further ado, let's go ahead. 5-minute review kind of mixes with last class. Last class, I had you guys do a little bit of research on the Articles of the Constitution. Not the Articles of Confederation, which is our first Constitution, but the 7 articles of our current Constitution. And what I saw was a little bit of uneasiness, not really knowing, an inability for us to kind of understand, and that's okay. So today, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go over them again. So no big deal. No big deal if we don't get something. We'll keep going until we get it. That being said, we're going to blend these two, like I said, the 5-minute review and the Articles of the Constitution, starting right now. So go ahead. What I want you to do is I want you to get your notes out, not from last class, but from the class before. That's going to help us with our review and lead us into today, where we talk about the Articles of our current Constitution. All right, guys. So 5-minute review, a little bit different. No PowerPoint, no going through specific questions from the whole unit. Just want to get on with this structure stuff. So we're just going to quickly talk about what we've talked about the past 2 classes. Structure of the Constitution first. Our introduction is called the Preamble. It's our statement of purpose or introduction, and it lists off how many goals? 6 goals that were all aimed at fixing very specific weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, our first Constitution. It starts with We the People, which talks about democracy, popular sovereignty. I guess I shouldn't say it talks about it, but it implies that and shows that we're a government of the people, for the people, and that the people also are in charge of. We talked about each specific goal, how there was to form a more perfect union, to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, not warfare, 2 completely different things, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. We looked at the whole preamble and talked about how each one of those specifically was aimed at fixing another weakness of the Constitution. Now, the second part, if you recall, there are 3 parts of the Constitution. The second part are the articles, of which there are 7. So go ahead. I told you to get your notes out. If you don't have them, go ahead and hit the pause button. Go get the notes from 2 classes ago. Not last class, but the class before. And I believe we left off with the preamble in red. So we're going to start here with blue now. The articles, 7 of those. Going to put that on the left-hand side of your Cornell notes. And we'll just start by saying, first, they are the main divisions. So we say chapters as well, but the main divisions, it's divided up into 7 sections, these 7 different articles. They're the main divisions, and just so we can stay on track here, let's stick with it. They are the chapters of, should make that a little bit bigger, capitalize that puppy, of the Constitution. And we use the word chapters because this Constitution is a rule book for government. So we've already touched on it a few times, but the Articles of Confederation and the 7 Articles of the Constitution are two completely different things. One was an entire Constitution. It was very bad, very weak. These are just the sections of our current Constitution. And they called them Articles because they wanted you guys to have a hard time remembering them. Probably not, but it is tough to remember, and it can be confusing. So take your time with this. If you ever have any questions, feel free to email me. I will help you out. But these are the articles, basically the chapters of our Constitution. The first one, and I should say the first 3. The first 3 articles of the Constitution spell out the powers and the structure of our 3 branches of government. Now, we've talked about separation of powers and how the founders separated powers into 3 different branches. The first one, which is the first section or the first article of the Constitution, is all about the legislative branch. And when we talk about the legislative branch, remember we talk about Congress, which is the Senate and House of Representatives. We're just going to put reps to make it all fit there. So we're talking about the Senate and the House of Representatives, and it spells out all the powers for the legislative branch. Now, this section is the first and longest section of the Constitution. Obviously, the framers and the founders thought that this branch was very important. They made it the longest by far, explaining all the intricate details, and they made it the first article. A lot of times people might say, who has more power? The legislative branch or the executive branch or the judicial branch? Well, that's a debate that you can have, and maybe there's not a right answer, but we can totally tell from how the founders put this first that they believed that the legislative branch was the most important of the 3. One thing to keep in mind here when we talk about the legislative branch, Congress, is that when we talk about Congress, Congress is the law-making body. And since we have a bicameral Congress, we have 2 law-making bodies. And we'll talk about both of those later on in the year. Switch it up here, go red for the second. Where's my red marker? There we go. The second article of the Constitution speaks about the executive branch. This, of course, is where we talk about the president. The executive branch, an easy way to remember this, is these are the people who carry out the laws. If the legislative branch makes the laws, the legislative branch carries out or executes the laws. So these guys carry out the law. Another good way to say that is they enforce the law. The executive branch is responsible for enforcing the laws of the United States. if you recall, the very first idea that we had about the executive branch is that they didn't want one president, they wanted three presidents. Now, we've talked about that a lot, but do we think that that would work? Is there anybody at home that thinks that would work? If we took Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden, put them all together and said, the three of you all are going to make decisions, do you think they'd agree on anything? Probably not. Probably more trouble than productivity. The executive branch, besides explaining how the laws will be carried out and who will be in charge, basically is all about the president and vice president. This is where it lays out the rules for becoming president. How old you must be, what type of citizen you must be. It lays out the rules for the vice president and says what you have to do and what kind of responsibilities you have. Very interesting stuff that we'll talk about later, but the second article is all about the executive branch. Switch it up and go to blue again. The third article of the United States Constitution is all about the, you guessed it, judicial branch. And this talks all about our justice system. This is the type of system we have in place to put into courts, or put courts into place, and to have judges, and how we do our rulings, how judges and this body can kind of look at and interpret the laws of the United States. Who does what, if they do it right, if they're doing it wrong, so on and so forth. This is also where we talk about the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, which is established by the Constitution. This was not something that was ever in place beforehand. The Constitution of the United States actually establishes the Supreme Court. It creates it. And then we also have the lower federal courts, which weren't established by the Constitution, but established by Congress. And in fact, we can make a note of that right here. For the Supreme Court, we can say established by the Constitution. And then the lower courts that aren't the higher Supreme Court, the lower courts were all established by Congress. So if you're ever having a test later on in this unit or later on in this year, and the question says, what is the only court created by the Constitution? It's not an appellate court. It's not a state court. It's not a federal court. I guess technically it's a federal court, but the correct answer is the Supreme Court of the United States. And that is found all in Article 3 of the Constitution. Let me go ahead and erase this board, and we'll pick up the next four. All right, the next article of the Constitution, Article number 4, and I'm using Roman numerals because that's how they're, used in the Constitution. So it's important that we know what a Roman numeral is, but also I wanted to make sure that you understood that that's how it's seen in the Constitution as well. So Article 4 is all about the states of the United States. What do we mean? Well, it talks about the relationships among states and how they are admitted to the Union. So basically, how they will act with each other. And there's something that we'll talk about in a few days called the Full Faith and Credit Clause. The Constitution is made up of a bunch of clauses, and this is a very important one about how states should treat each other since they're technically going to be their own individual body that makes up a larger United States. It also talks about the process of admitting new states to the Union. Now, what does that mean? Well, remember, we started off with 13 states. How many do we have now? 50 states. So we had to put in our Constitution the rules and the regulations for admitting a state to the Union. We couldn't just let anybody be like, hey, yo, I want to have a state. Can I be in here? Cool. No. They needed to have rules and regulations, and they needed to have a process for bringing new states into the United States. And then finally, in this section, it guarantees that all states will be protected by the United States government, which sounds funny, but it's kind of important, because how strong could your government be if whenever someone attacked you, you only cared about some states? Maybe you got into a war with France and they started to attack Florida, and your government said, we don't really like Florida anyway. Go ahead, you can take them. It's all yours. We don't care about those people. Can't have that. So in the Constitution, it also guarantees that, hey, no matter what differences a state may have from its national government, the national government will protect all of the states no matter what. Let's move on to number 5. Number 5 is going to take us through the process of amending the Constitution. Now, we know from our vocabulary and some previous lessons that to amend means to change the Constitution. And here is where we see some of that genius, some of that intelligence of the founders and the framers. They thought that the Constitution, it must be strong, just like Mr. Weckbaugh. But it also has to be flexible. We have to be able to change it. So we can change it through amendments. So really, when you think of an amendment, you should think of Mr. Weckbaugh, because I am very strong and very flexible. I'm neither of those two things. I am weak and I am not flexible. But the Constitution is different from myself, in that it is very strong, but we change it through amendments when we need to. The founders knew that, hey, maybe the type of government we have now won't be exactly the same in 200 years or 500 years. Who knows, it'll even be in existence, but it may change through time. So we need to be able to amend the Constitution and add things to it or change things about it. And that was brilliant. That was very brilliant. And Article 5 talks about the entire amending process and basically explains the rules and the steps for how to amend the Constitution. Article 6 of the Constitution is a little bit different from the previous articles in that it's pretty short. In fact, it's only one clause, and we call it the Supremacy Clause, meaning to be supreme. What does supreme mean? It means you're number one. So what does the Supremacy Clause say? It says that the Constitution and any other federal laws that are created take precedence over state laws. Now, what does that mean, to take precedence? Well, if the two are ever in conflict, if there's ever a national law and a state law that say the opposite, the national law is the one you must follow. You might be thinking to yourself, Mr. Weckbaugh, what kind of situation would we ever find ourselves in where there's a difference between a national law and a state law, and people are, in doubt of which one to follow? Well, right now across the country, we are seeing sweeping changes in different states, where state by state by state, state governments are allowing the use of marijuana to be legal. They are saying it is no longer illegal. A lot of states, our own included, as we just found out, Arizona, are legalizing marijuana and telling people who have been charged with these crimes or any pending cases that they're going to wipe the slate clean. However, those are all state laws. That's why it's happening state by state. In the United States of America, it is still illegal to smoke marijuana, meaning this: according to the Supremacy Clause, a national agent could make sure that you are arrested for smoking marijuana, even if it's legal in your state. Now, how often does that happen, some of you might be wondering? Not that often, because national government agencies usually have bigger fish to fry than worrying about some kids or some adults in a condo somewhere smoking marijuana. They have bigger problems, and we're not going to divert those resources to stop some people from smoking marijuana. However, technically, even if a state says that marijuana is legal in your state, California, Oregon, Colorado, New Jersey, and now Arizona amongst them, it is still illegal in the United States. So if there was ever a conflict between those two and you were charged with something along those lines, the national law would take precedence due to the Supremacy Clause. Now, the final article of the Constitution is also really small and really easy to wrap your head around. It simply says that the Constitution would become official once 9 of the 13 states ratified it. So we say that it's all about ratification. And if you recall, ratification, we've been saying, means to approve. So basically, this was all just ideas, and it was a plan. And the 7th article says, hey, this will become official and take effect when 9 out of the 13 current states ratify it. Now, the last part is just the amendments, which are also very simple. Let's take a look. Finally, the amendments, the final part of the Constitution. Now, I put the articles in a little brief format up here just so you could see that underneath our articles is where I want you to write these notes. But amendments, underneath it says there are 27. 27 total, 7 articles. Never get those two numbers confused. But what is an amendment? We've been saying it all year. It's a change or addition to the Constitution. We said it has to be flexible but strong. It's spelled out in Article 5. That's where we learn all about how to do this amending process. There are 27 total, as we put under here, and the first 10 are the Bill of Rights. If you recall, that's what the Anti-Federalists were so against with this Constitution. They said, there's no Bill of Rights in this Constitution. And there wasn't. So the first 10 amendments, the first 10 times we changed the Constitution, was our Bill of Rights. Remember, Madison agreed, he promised to add a Bill of Rights as long as the Anti-Federalists would vote for the Constitution, this new Constitution. They made an agreement. Madison kept his word and added a Bill of Rights, and they were the first 10 changes. This is where you'll find things. Remember, a Bill of Rights, they're individual rights. So this is where you'll find things like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, all of those things that you hear about all the time, whether it's in a courtroom or whether, you're in a fight with somebody, your mom or some school official, and you say, well, I can say what I want, I have freedom of speech. Well, no, not really, and we'll talk about that. But this is where you find those freedoms in the Bill of Rights. All right, a lot of notes right there. If you have any questions, feel free to email me and we can go over them. But for right now, it is vocab quiz time. Let's go ahead and get ready for this puppy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here is your actual vocabulary quiz. Now, I know I said I was going to send it to you via email, but I thought it'd be much easier this way for you to just fill out the answers in an email and send it to me instead of having to download a document. You can just go ahead and send me the answers. So since this is the first time we're taking a vocab quiz, let's take a look at how this should work. Right here you have 3 questions, each have a blank. Right up here you have 5 words to choose from. You're going to choose 3 out of these 5 words. You're going to put one here, and one here. That means you're going to not use 2 of them. And the same is true for numbers 4, 5, and 6. There will be 3 vocabulary words that fit into these spaces, and there will be 2 extras. You'll choose from these 5 for 4, 5, and 6. For numbers 7, 8, and 9, you'll choose from this list right here. Eminent domain, search warrant, double jeopardy, federalism, and civil rights. You'll put 3 of those in here. 2 of them you won't use. Finally, the final 3, 10, 11, and 12, same thing. Delegate, compromise, federalist, anti-federalist, and poll tax are the words you can choose from. And you'll put 3 of them in these blank spaces, and 2 of them you won't use. You will never use a word more than once in a section either. So for example, if for some reason you thought the answer to number 1 was probable cause, you would not put it again for number 3. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. All you need to do for this is email me your answers. Make sure that they line up. Tell me what number 1 through number 12 is. For example, say number 1 is blah, blah, blah. Number 2 is blah, blah. Number 3, blah, blah, blah. Just make sure that I can understand your answers and give you a good grade. Hey, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Not too hard, right? Fairly simple stuff for your vocabulary quiz. Be expecting those puppies. You're going to have one every single unit from here on out. But that puts a wrap on the day. We are done with government today. We only have left your assignment and your attendance question. Today's assignment is going to be 2 parts, okay? 1, you're going to send me the answers to your vocabulary quiz. Send me every single answer. Remember, if you didn't know one, guess. Always better to guess. A guess could be wrong. It might be right. If you leave it blank and don't guess, it's definitely going to be wrong. The second part, which is also going to be your attendance question, boom, boom, is a picture of your Constitution notes, okay? Everything we talked about 2 classes ago followed up by today's notes on the 7 different articles. That will be your attendance question. So 2 things you're sending in to me today that you're getting credit. Make sure you send both. They can both be in the same email. No problem. That is fine. Guess they could even be in different emails if you want, but that's just more work. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great weekend. Look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.